All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Omolola Fashesin. Thank you for joining my channel. I know you are very busy, and during this festive period, it's always a very busy time. Thank you for taking out time out of your busy schedule to come and share your experience and the system that has helped you to be successful in your career and every area of your life. Thank you so much. So, to start with, I would like to start by telling us who is Omolola Fashesin.
Awesome. Thank you, Johnson, for having me on your show. I'm really grateful, and I want to commend you for the great job you're doing. Like you rightly introduced me, my name is Omolola Fashesin. I work as Principal Sustainability Standards with the Canadian Sustainability Standards Board. A role I actually started in April 2022 after I relocated to Canada that same year. Before my move, I'd worked as the head of sustainability risk and capital management with Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC. That is the Nigerian subsidiary of Africa's largest bank by assets, which is the Standard Bank. My academic journey began with a bachelor's degree in agroeconomics. I later pursued my MBA at the Alliance Manchester Business School of the University of Manchester in the UK. I also hold the fundamentals of sustainability accounting credential, which is the FSA credential. I'm a professionally designated accountant in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Nigeria. I'm talking about family. I'm a wife to one husband. I have three children. A 9-year-old, she's actually going to be 9 tomorrow. I know this will be aired sometime later on, but she's going to be 9 on December 31. And then I have a 6-year-old twin as well.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm the last child in my family growing up. So growing up, I was that, baby of the house, like I always call it, where we come from in Nigeria. So it was I had, it was a great time growing up in my family, and it's also a great time raising my own kids now with my husband.
Wow, that is great. I mean, you have got a very robust resume there. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I mean, and going through, I mean, researching your roles and different things like that you have done in your career, you have been very successful. I'm going to get into that. So, if you are going to define success in your own terms, what do you think success means to you?
That's a fantastic question. Personally, I would say that success means achieving that personal fulfillment, not just professionally, but also in my personal life. I'm talking about setting personal goals and achieving them. It also means, living a life of purpose and making a positive impact in the life of other people around me. So it's also not a destination, like we always say, it's a journey of self-discovery, of self-growth, self-achievement, fulfillment, and learning as you go along your journey.
Wow. So now one thing that you mentioned there is that having achieving a set goal, living a life of fulfillment.
Mhm.
So in setting goals, in your own case, you studied agricultural economics. At
Mhm.
what point did you say, okay, I think I'm going to pivot to financial services or financial industry? At what point is it a part of the goals you set that particular year, or how did you come up with the idea of going into the bank instead of focusing on the agri economics? I mean, I know I want to shed
Yeah.
more light on
Yeah.
being an agri economist and then pivoting into the financial services.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to do that. I think I should give you some further background into what led me to economics in the first instance.
Okay.
Growing up, in my time, I'm sure you also perhaps your time as well. Most of us then wanted to become medical doctors. It was just, the dream career for everyone. So I wanted to become a medical doctor. My parents also supported that dream. So I entered the first university, but unfortunately, I couldn't gain admission into study medicine. I had a decent JAM score then, but then I just did not get into medicine. So they said, you know what, you go into your first year study physiology, and then in the second year, you'd go into medicine. But then unfortunately that didn't happen. And I'm grateful for my parents. They're quite visionary. They said, you know what, from the very beginning, I'm someone that is very numerate. I'm not the, I'm not the medicine type. to be candid, in fairness, but then I just, had that, the younger version of me, just had that, what, that's medicine, that doctor that everyone wants to become must be my goal as well. So to your point, I didn't have that goal. So when medicine didn't happen in the second year, my parents just said, what, since you're very numerate, I'm a very numerate person, I like numbers and all that. Why don't you just go into something along that line? Since I was in the social science classes, so I couldn't, pivot into something like economics. And the university I was in, the University of Ibadan, didn't have accounting, as a course then. So they said, what, I think economics would still fit your profile, but then had other plans lined up for me. Like I said, I'm the last child, so I'm baby of the house, and my parents are quite visionary. I'm grateful for that. And so that, what, just let's try this economics. But once you're done, you start taking ICANN classes. ICANN, for the sake of our global audience, is the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, the professional body for accountants in Nigeria. So I went through, my 5 years of economics, but immediately I finished, that very moment I dropped my pen, I started taking classes to become a professionally designated accountant. So that was what led into that pivot from the very beginning. It was just the natural thing for me to do, seeing that I was numerate and I love to play around with numbers. And then thankfully, by the time I graduated and then I started looking for jobs, I got a finance role in one of the banks in Nigeria. And then I was also placed in the finance shop. So it was just, that career progression then started from having that finance analyst role in that bank. And then over the years, I began to do things along that finance area before I then pivoted again into something else. Yeah.
Wow, that is interesting because I can relate to the fact that every parent, when they are tried to be a medical doctor, I had to
Mhm.
I had some mini fight with my parents, said that I didn't want to study medicine. I just told them I did not want to study medicine because I felt I would do better in certain areas. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, thankfully, I mean, I think I'm not doing badly in my engineering that I chose.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I know, I understand that every parent wants to be called, I'm a doctor. I mean, something like that.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
kind of, yeah.
Absolutely.
So now, I know that to be successful in any area of life, one required to sacrifice some things. Because
Mm.
you and I know that success doesn't just come on people, drop on people's laps. So
Mhm.
now, both on the academic front and as well as in your career as a professional, what are some of those sacrifices you have had to make for you to be successful?
A lot. And I'll start with one, talking about time, leisure time, especially time to just faff around, time to just, do things that you just want to rest and, you know, I remember very early in my career, like I mentioned, I was working with a particular bank and I was young, I was perhaps like 22, and I was also studying for my professional accountant course back then. And then I would go to work Monday to Friday. And at times when it's month-end period, when it's a month-end cycle period, reporting period, we would need to go to work even on Saturdays and Sundays. And then I had classes to attend. So what that meant was I had zero time for leisure activities, for social life. It was just my life was that work, home, study, was just that triangle
Triangle.
for for many, many years. Like I said, social life was zero. So what did I sacrifice? I sacrificed time for my leisure time and then for social life, having, going out to watch a movie, staying at home to just relax and do that. It wasn't just possible because there was just a lot to do. Now, later on, also, I'm someone that is committed to, continuous lifelong learning. So even I've noticed that even, since I also came to Canada, I have to take a number of courses. And so the cycle actually still continues to say that when I just need to devote some time and to study, but something needs to shift. So I need to reduce the number of hours I would have spent going through social media, for example, so things like that, are the areas in which I've had to sacrifice. Also, I think another area for me is leaving my comfort zone. And I'm sure you're wondering, but well, how is that a sacrifice? I think, having that courage to step out of your comfort zone. So I remember I was on a particular role in my last place of work in Nigeria, and I'd been on that role for about 4 years. And I kid you not, I could go through that task. I was leading a team, but I thought that I was actually done. It was my comfort zone. I was good at what I was doing. My appraisal score was great, but I knew it within me that, you know what, I think I need to do more. I shouldn't wait for the organization to tell me that, Lola, we think you've outgrown this role. I knew within myself that in a number of years I would outgrow the role and I would need to move to something. So it was, making that sacrifice of leaving my comfort zone at that point in time, raising my hand and say, you know what, I'm available for something else if another role comes calling. So, in the area of, realizing when it's time to move, leaving your comfort zone, you can stay. I could have stayed there and be, going through the routine, things I already know, things I can, between myself and my team members, we could run the shop conveniently without any hassle. But then I wanted more. So in that area of, realizing that it's time to move, leaving my comfort zone and looking for something more challenging is another area I think I've sacrificed, and I think it paid off on the long run.
Wow, those are very critical points you have touched on there. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you talked
Mm-hmm.
about time, that one
Mm-hmm.
has to sacrifice time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that is very, very true because leisure time are times where people we kind of waste it at some way.
Mm-hmm.
But now, when you now
Absolutely.
invest time like that
Mm-hmm.
into improving yourself, the
Mm-hmm.
multiple or the ripple effect is going to be very great. And secondly, you mentioned um, uh, moving out of one comfort zone. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is critical. And I'm going to touch that based on that because part of moving out of your comfort zone is coming to Canada as well.
Oh,
Because,
absolutely. Yeah.
because nothing great actually happened in our comfort zone. Nothing great
Mm,
because you are
mm,
there, you know what's going on. In fact, you just one can even become complacent because it's your comfort
absolutely.
zone, and then you just do
Yeah,
things. Okay,
absolutely.
yeah. So I think that is
Absolutely.
very key. Those are sacrifices
Yeah,
that need to be made because
absolutely.
getting out of comfort zone means that there will be some pains that will be felt. I mean, you are
Absolutely.
stretching yourself at a point. So that is, like you said,
Absolutely.
it
Yeah,
pays off
yeah,
in the long
yeah,
run.
yeah,
So
yeah.
now,
It requires facing fears and taking risk. Yeah, because you don't know how it's going to turn out. Yeah,
mm,
yeah.
taking risk. Now, talking
Mm,
about taking risk, I
mm-hmm,
know you actually took a risk by coming to Canada.
mm-hmm,
So now, looking at what you are doing currently as a principal as a
mm-hmm,
sustainability standard at Canadian Sustainability Standard Board, what
mm-hmm.
exactly do you do there? And I'm going to follow up with one more question, but let's further touch on that. What exactly do
Okay.
you do as a principal in that on that board in Canada? And then how does that compare?
Mm-hmm.
Or can we just suppose that with what you used to do back in Nigeria as a risk
Okay.
manager?
Okay, fantastic. I have a very interesting role, one that I'm grateful for. Before I talk about what I do, I should provide some context about the Canadian Sustainability Standards Board. So it's a new board that is created to set sustainability standards in Canada. And to provide further context, so sustainability reporting is an emerging area. So in the past, we've had accounting standards, for example, the International Financial Reporting Standards, where you have countries across the globe that have adopted these standards, such that if a company in Africa and another company in Europe prepares their financial statements using these standards, you can compare them because they are prepared based on the same standards. Now, you've seen companies also go beyond reporting on their financial performance and now reporting on their sustainability performance. Now, over time, different companies have adopted different frameworks, that exist. But then a couple of years back, an international body came up to say, you know what, we're going to set sustainability standards for countries to also adopt, for companies to adopt, such that when you pick a sustainability report that has been prepared in Nigeria and compared with one that's prepared in Canada, it can actually, it's comparable if they use the same, global baseline. So that is what, this whole standard setting is all about. Now, coming on to Canada, I've mentioned that the CSSV for short is the standard setter in Canada. So what do I do, as my role?
Yeah.
I can, divide it into three. I contribute to technical research to support those sustainability standards proposals. So every time that the board needs to, propose new standards, they need staff behind the scene to actually research and say, okay, what should we be proposing to the market? So that's the first part, to contribute to that research. The second part is now when the proposals are made, the way standard setting works here in Canada is rooted in very, deep due process. So the standard setter will not just issue those standards and say, guys, these are the standards. You need to consult the market, have engaged all the interested and affected parties, because for every standard, we have parties that are interested in it and have parties that will be affected by those standards. So consult them, gather their feedback, and then take it back. So as staff also, I conduct those outreach, engage different industry associations, different interested and affected parties across Canada, and take feedback back to the board. So those feedback would then inform the final decision that the board would make. Okay. And then also I also contribute to educational effort in the area of sustainability reporting. Now, how it compares to my role back in Nigeria, it's totally different. So I headed the sustainability team of Stanbic IPCC, like I said. So in that role, I was still in that role, I would have been, taking the standards issued by that global body that I talked about, which is the International Sustainability Standards Book. So instead of the C in CSSB, you have the I, the ISSB. I would have, perhaps, when then, adopting those standards and using it when we want to report in the sustainability disclosures performance of Stanbic IBTC, would have then reported based on those standards. So it's my role now is further up the value chain. If I can use, that value chain illustration to say I'm now part of that system that sets the standards for entities, like banks, different kind of entities. You can think about engineering companies, different kind of entities, to then pick those standards and use when they want to report on their performance.
Okay, now touching base on that sustainability standards, now is that sustainability part of your reporting similar to, I think, this UN ESG? Is there anything?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of people do, equates sustainability and ESG together. So yes, and the ESG goes beyond the United Nations. Perhaps you're talking about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, but it goes, it's much more encompassing, goes more, beyond the SDGs. But yes, yeah.
And does that now, let me see now, there's particular economic term that I want to come to my mind now. This circular economy. Is it something that has to do? Well, yeah. Now, so does it have to, that sustainability standard, does it also has a role to play in making our economy a bit more circular?
Okay. So
I don't want to be technical, but I just want clarification. Just come to my mind now. I was like, okay.
Okay, let me paraphrase and say that the standards that we're setting now would be for disclosures, such that companies do not cherry pick what they need to disclose about their performance, their standards, so and it's to inform investors' decision such that when investors pick the sustainability report, they can decide, oh, you know what, they can assess the performance of that company and decide if they want to allocate more capital to that company or not. On the long run, yes, it's going to help, because what gets measured, on the long run, it's going to contribute to, having the economy becoming more circular.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I mean, I know that I'm also a very big fan of circular economy. I'm doing a bit of study personally on my own because I believe that we could have a circular economy. Yeah. Sorry for taking you into technical part of
it.
Sorry. Okay. So the next question I'm going to ask is this: you were visibly successful in Nigeria in your roles that you have taken. I took my time to go through those things. I found out you were visibly successful. Do you think, in your own measure, that the successes you are recording right now in Canada has an undertone of the kind of training and the successes you had back from Nigeria. So what I'm trying to say is this: does your successes you are having right now has anything to do with some of the things that you did in Nigeria? I mean, the successes and the trainings that you had back home in Nigeria. And the reason why I ask that question is
Yeah.
this: I will tell you. I have had several leaders. People say, "Oh, you're from Nigeria. There's nothing there. No big deal. Everything is just a waste." But I have equally seen a lot of professionals from Nigeria getting to Canada or to other part of the world and doing well. And I'm beginning to think that probably our trainings from Nigeria is not actually garbage, but actually very important. But I wanted you to tell me if there is any merit from what you were, the trainings that you got from Nigeria, from UI to IBTC and other places you have worked up to what you are doing right now. Any link?
Yeah, so for me, I would say that, success it doesn't respect your location, whether you're in a developing country in Africa or in a much more developed country in North America. It's jurisdiction agnostic. It's more about you, how you've been brought up, how you purposed your life over time. So I would say that it's within you. So whether the place, and to answer your question directly would be yes, okay. I can link it because it's about me, it's about what have been, over time, what I've been able to develop and how God has helped me over time also to develop, that maybe that's blueprint for success. Of course, I cannot underestimate the power that God has had in my life. I know it's not something it's not very popular in the part of the world we live right now, but I cannot, say, I can't underestimate it. But talking about what I've done personally and what makes it, that wherever I go, I would say that success would go with me is about, having that goal and vision. So, I mean, if you are someone in Africa or in North America, if you have clear goals and vision, what you want to do, what you want to achieve, you have them well written, well documented, you can run with it. It gives you that sense of direction and purpose. Very closely linked to that is self-discipline, focus. If you can also, it's one thing to have goals and visions, another thing to be disciplined, to then focus on those dreams, to stay focused, keep your eye on the ball, to avoid distractions and not follow the crowd. Also, another thing is having those, and again, that one it has no correlation with geography, it has no correlation with the continent you are in. Also, having personal values, upholding ethical principles, be known for something. There's a saying that if you don't start for something, you'll fall for anything. Be known for integrity. Be known for that person that goes out of their way. Be known for that to be that responsible person. Now, you know what? We can commit this thing into Johnson's and it's going to deliver. When you have such values, you will succeed regardless of where you are. Dedication is another thing. Again, that has nothing to do with where you are. Being diligent, being committed, being consistent, being known for excellence, doing quality work, someone that can be trusted. Again, and then a last thing is continuous learning. I'm a big fan, of continuous learning. I pride myself as being a lifelong learner. So again, when you have that growth mindset, when you're open to learning new things, when you're able to adapt to changing circumstances, again, regardless of where you are, you will succeed.
Now, now, I think it just it's some things that I can resonate with, and that's the fact that you said success is non-geographical. It means that it doesn't matter where you are. When you
Mhm.
engage the system of success, you will succeed,
Absolutely.
whether it's in
Absolutely.
Nigeria or in Canada. And you have
Mm.
equally ruled out some of those things that make up your system. You talked about dedication. You talked about focus, talked
Mhm.
about vision. You talked
Mhm.
about writing your vision and running with it. Talked about
Mhm.
being a person of integrity. I mean, when you are somebody that is dependable, that then okay, if I give these things to Omolola, I can sleep and Omolola will deliver. And that
Mhm.
has nothing to do with wherever you are. So I came with this conclusion that It is impossible for you to be a lion in Nigeria or Africa and suddenly become a lizard in North America. No. Something must
Spot
be
on.
wrong somewhere if that happened. But if you are a lion, if you were a lion in Africa, then it definitely is going to, you're going to be a lion anywhere, including Canada. And that is what you have
Absolutely.
equally told me right now. Because those
Absolutely.
things, those routine, those skills and disciplines that you have that has helped you to be successful in Nigeria are equally the things that you have been engaging here in Canada, and the success are
Absolutely.
there for everybody to see. Thank you so much. That is very, and I hope our audience are listening to that, because some people have come to think that, oh, well, you cannot, if you are coming to Canada or coming to North America, you could suddenly become less of yourself. You could suddenly
Yeah,
become less successful. Now you are telling us that it doesn't have to happen that way if you are
absolutely.
engaging the system. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, now you have worked in top multinational um, banks. You have handled big portfolio. I mean, and now you are a principal here. How have you been able to do this at this level? I mean, and at that level where you are head of a team, you are a principal, like you said your role right now is like steps ahead of what we are doing in Nigeria in that value chain. How have you been able to maintain the level of success? Yeah, I know you said you followed that routine, yes, but how have you been able to do it, given the level of time and expertise that these roles will require?
Yeah. Again, another interesting question. I would answer that in two ways. Number one is working with a competent team. For every head of team that you see, the same way they say behind every successful man
Oh,
is a
man.
woman. I would also say that behind every successful team leader or unit head and all that is a very, competent team. So I'm grateful for the teams I've had over the years in Nigeria and also here in Canada. Working with that competent team it can't, it brings, some respite to you, in a great way. So that's number one. Number two, I would say, is continuous learning. We're in a field that is changing rapidly, and it's not only our field. Almost every area is actually changing very rapidly. So it's important to keep up with emerging trends, being knowledgeable, knowing your onions. There's a saying that to whom much is given, much is expected. I mean, so you should demonstrate, you should come to the table showing that you know your onions, you've got substance, and that comes through continuous learning. That comes through, having that open mindset, and having that quest for knowledge is something that has kept me going.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that. I mean, team. I mean, talking about team, you need that great team to be successful, and that is what you have mentioned now. I am going to ask this question, and this question is because I'm a big fan of education. I am, and like you quite rightly said there, that you are also a lifelong learner. There is this thing that is happening back home in Nigeria, in Africa, where some people are beginning to lose hope in education. They are beginning to see that, in fact, there's this phrase that people use, that education is a scam, all right, because of what they are seeing around them. They are beginning to see that some people that did not go to school are much more successful than people that spent years in the universities and even did some graduate program. In your own estimation, would you say, and given the level of success you have recorded in your life, would you say education is a scam?
Absolutely not.
Please speak to that, please.
And no, education opens up your mind to, to new things. I don't know from what aspect they think education is a scam, but I would totally on the other side of the fence. in my mind, I think education is a door opener. It's not, it's far from being a scam. It's something that can open doors for you. There's something about being ready for your opportunity. So if you think, okay, you know what, why are we even doing this? But guess what? The day an opportunity would show up to take you out of that situation that you currently do not like, it could be that education that will come through. But then if you're not prepared for that education, for that opportunity, then you lose it. So for me, I think education is what prepares me for what lies ahead, for
Mm.
opportunities that lies ahead.
Well, that is interesting.
Mm.
You saying that education prepares one for opportunities that's a deep one. I mean, that is a deep one. So meaning that as you are improving yourself, you are building capacity for
Absolutely.
opportunities. And when the opportunity comes, you are prepared. Because I
Makes you
love this saying.
prepared.
There's a saying that when uh, when opportunities show up, it will be too late to prepare. But when
Absolutely.
you prepare prior to the opportunity, you are ready for it, and it comes, you just
Absolutely.
grab it. So, to my fellow viewers and listeners, please, education is not a scam. Omolola just told us that if you are not getting the opportunities now, keep building capacity through education. And before you know
Absolutely.
it, opportunities will come knocking your door, and it is through education that you can open such. Now,
Absolutely.
when I interview women, I have this
Mhm.
question I ask them. And it is because I've seen a lot of women break the ceiling. They have shattered the ceiling. They have done extremely well. But I know that it is not an easy task for women to break through some of the toughest of barriers, given the nature of who they are. So now, and like you have mentioned during your introduction, that you are a wife, you are a mother,
Mhm.
you are a sister, you are
Mhm.
a lot of things to a lot of people.
Mhm.
You are a home builder. Given all of this, and given how successful you are, how have you been able to wear these many hats
Mm.
successfully? I know that, but take your
Yeah.
time to answer that. I know
Yeah, I
that's a
know.
very,
Yeah, I know.
very,
I know.
and
It's
it's
a
a question
question that, like you
that
said, that is very, common that I get asked, most times also. So number one is having that support system. From my number one fan, I've got a very supportive husband, who believes in is also a very successful professional as well. But he realizes that I have my own dreams as well and just, lets me run and achieve my dreams and goals and all that. So having that supportive husband is very key for me, ensures that at least the home front is sorted. I don't go to work thinking about, oh, what's going to happen at home and all that. That's sorted and all that. And back in Nigeria also, the way it works then, if you're middle class, you could afford a nanny, if you could afford a driver and all that. So having that, beyond having a supportive husband, I also had that support system, things that I outsource, having someone to drive me to work while I can then relax, maybe in while driving to work, read a book and listen to something to relax my mind and all that. Having nannies to take care of my kids while I'm at work and all that. So that support system, and also of course family as well, mother-in-law, sisters and all that. So having that support system worked really well for me, and it's still working for me. Now coming to Canada is a different ballgame. We're in a life of do it yourself, DIY. My support system, my number one support system is still there. My husband, it goes all the way to help me. And then now what I've come to do in Canada is to ensure I manage my time very well. I know that no nannies, no maid, no driver,
yeah.
but then I've just had to, have that, shift of mindset. Say, okay, you know what? I do all these things, but I have a roster. I don't have to wake up in the morning and start thinking, okay, what are the children going to take to school? What are we going to prepare for lunch? What are they going to wear to school? You have that roster. You have things laid out every Sunday. Well, laying out clothes for the week. So just proper time management is something that has helped me here, knowing that I'm in a DIY environment. So time management, support system. Also, even so that I also give honor. So honor is I still have the support system here. Only that people that don't obviously they don't live with me, but I have in terms of family, cousins, and also that if I need something, I can easily call a friend and say, you know what, please bail me out. I need to do something. Can I drop the kids over for a few hours and all that? So the support system actually still continues here, but in a different way and format. And then just having that schedule, that routine that I follow, and also making sure that my kids are also aware of that routine and they help me out. Interestingly, the how many 1.5 years or so, kind of spent here, the kids have actually also grown beyond, being the kids that the nanny will take care of, wear your clothes for, do all those things. So they are now, more independent and all that. So I think that's one positive thing that I've actually seen. But to answer your question, support system, time management, keeping to routine, just organizing, planning and organizing myself such that I'm not overly stressed out. Yeah.
I think women do well at managing time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of women succeed. I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
lot. I mean, sometimes I look at my wife, I was like, how do you do all of this? That is kudos to all the women out there.
Yeah.
I celebrate you guys because are doing a good
Mm-hmm.
job. Doing a good job. Now, Nigeria and Africa, they are currently in a serious financial situation. And
Mm-hmm.
then a lot of people are struggling financially, and that is impacting how far many people can dream of being successful.
Mm-hmm.
As somebody who lived in Nigeria and is currently
Mm-hmm.
living in Canada, what will be your advice to both young and old in terms of how they can then dream about being successful? I don't know if you understand that question, but the way I'm looking at it is that uh, financially, people are struggling to make ends meet in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not starting today. I know it's been forever that people have had to struggle and struggle through life. But
Mm-hmm.
how would you advise the old and the young, even in the face of these challenges, to still dream and become successful?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. So first thing I would say is to invest in yourself. If that's one thing you should do, everyone should do is to invest in oneself. Make sure again, we can't, everything we talk about this evening, we'll keep going back to that lifelong learning, that continuous learning. Invest in yourself, continue to learn, continue to adapt to changing trends and all that. We have a lot of micro credentials, a lot of certifications out there. You can enroll for one, just upskill, upgrade, and all that, build capacity. I think another area is in area of building relationships,
Mm.
also engage with your peers, have mentors, have that, professionals with similar area that you're all in similar area of interest. I mean, talk about the old and the young and the old. So for the young person, I would say get a mentor, get someone to learn from. They say experience is the best teacher, but guess what? It doesn't have to be your own experience.
Can
It
learn
can
from
be the
others.
experience. Yes, it can be the experience of your mentor. So get a mentor. And for the old, because I heard you mention the young and the old, for the old, also give back, be a mentor to someone. You've seen how things do not work. You probably had, a few instances of failure that other people can learn from. So share your experience, mentor someone, hold someone's hand, pull someone along as you go up the ladder, also, pull someone along. Um, Adaptability is a very, key thing I would say as well, because things are changing. There's this survey that said that some jobs that exist today, by the time I don't know, have the facts, readily available, but we do know that trends are changing. Jobs that exist today will not exist later in some years to come. So be adaptable to change, be flexible, be resilient, and I'm sure you will come out successful.
Thank you so much. One thing that hit me from what you have said now is to be adaptable. Two
Mm-hmm.
things at your adaptability, and number two, getting a mentor. I mean, there's this quote by Sir Isaac Newton that I love so much. He says, "If I have seen farther than others, it is by
Mm.
standing on the shoulders of giants."
Yes,
So there are
absolutely.
so many giants out there, and I know that if I allow you to talk about the giants you have stood on their shoulders in your career,
Mm.
you have loads of them. And people should also, yeah,
Absolutely.
people should build relationship with people, like you said, and ensure that they are
Mm.
learning from older folks who had gone through the path. Let them share their success and their lessons learned along the path, and you'll
Absolutely.
become better. Thank you so much for doing that, Amala. I have two more questions before I allow you to go this evening. And the first question is going to be that, having been successful in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
Canada, what are your biggest obstacles so far, and how have you been able to overcome them?
Mm.
Even
Okay, let me talk about a few.
okay,
I don't know how to rank them if one is bigger than the other, but I'll
okay.
just
So
like
we
I'll
assume
talk
there's no
about
ranking. There's no ranking. Okay.
yeah. So let's start from the very beginning. I talked about not being able to change to medicine, that was decades ago. And the reason I didn't mention it earlier on. The reason I couldn't change to medicine was because I failed a particular course
Hmm.
in 100 level. And surprisingly, I knew someone that failed, that was in my same shoe a year ahead of me, wanted to change to medicine, but then failed that same course. And I was, actually teaching that person, two of them actually. I was teaching those two people. I was in 100 level, they were in 200 level, and I was teaching them this same course, and they passed it on their second attempt, and then I failed it. It was the irony of things, but then because of that, I couldn't change to medicine. So that was the day I got my results, and it dawned on me that based on that result that I failed this course, I was
But where?
the chance of me, it was a big blow to me.
Hmm.
Again, then I was 15. I entered university at the age of 15. Sorry, 16. So I was 16, 17. I was young. But it hit me really hard. But then being able to pick up, even though through the influence of my parents, being able to rearrange myself and then shift gears back to a more commercial course kind of. The second course, so after, then I then left physiology and then moved to the agric economics. And then fast forward and then I knew my parents had, because my parents had done it for my two older sisters, immediately they finished their university education, they got enrolled in ICANN classes. So I knew that I was in line for that as well. I knew I was going to be an accountant, it was the next thing for me. And so when I was in 500 level, one of the big four came to the University of Ibadan back then, and they did a test. They conducted a test for everyone whose GP was going to fall within a 2-1 and first class. So everyone that was going to make it 2-1 and first class was going to make it 2-1. I was already in that bucket. So they did a test for all of us, in that bucket. And surprisingly, 11 of us out of 100, I can't remember how many people, wrote that test, but we were in our hundreds. Surprisingly, sorry, not surprisingly, interestingly, I came out tops. There's 11 of us. They chose 11 of us out of hundreds of people. So I was one of the 11. So the next step was, they came to school to conduct the test. The next step was that we're then going to travel. We're in Ibadan, and we're going to travel to Lagos to meet the partner for the interview.
That is.
So yeah, so the date was set. I went for the interview. I met the partner. I can still remember till tomorrow. And the usual thing, will call you back, we'll get back to you with your results. And then the day they were meant to call back, they didn't call. And then, we had a home phone. There was no GSM back then. We had home phone at home. So I called, but then they gave us a number to also call in should you not hear from them. So I called, and lo and behold, I was not successful. So out of the 11, the short list of 11 eventually chose 3. And then I was not part of the 3. Oh my God, I was shattered, because I already knew I was going to be an accountant. It was the next thing for me. And it was just perfect timing that at this big four, I
Big
won't mention
four.
them, big four, one of the big four, it was things were just lining up. But then at the last minute, that dream just got shattered. But then, unlike when I was in 100 level, when my parents had to, come, it was me now. See, okay, even though I'm not going to get this big four for now, I would not let that deter me. I learned from my failure. I cried for a day, you know. But then I just picked up my piece. I said, okay, you know what, this big four, I said no to me. It's okay, but I'll still be an accountant anyway.
Mm.
I think there's
Mm.
something synonymous with being an accountant. Well, back then in my mind then, and working with the big four, it was just like, okay, it was just the perfect fit. But I said, okay, you know what, I'll still be an accountant anyway. I'll still be a successful accountant. So I mean, so what that meant was immediately I finished my university and then went to serve. For those three people they were eventually chosen, they served with them. So that means I had to then go and serve somewhere else. I served in a bank, and immediately I finished service here, I started looking also for finance role, accounting role. Surprisingly, I didn't go near any of the other big three. I just focused on banks, and thankfully I got one, and I got into the finance team of it. But I mean, I learned back I didn't allow that deter me and say, you know what, I'm not even going to study to become an accountant again. But it was something that I learned, and I was able to quickly bounce back and just move on.
Wow.
I think another challenge that I've had to overcome is doing new things. Over time, like I mentioned earlier on, that I've had it, different more than once actually. I have to put on my hands, say, I want to do new things. I want to leave my my comfort zone and learn new and do new things. But then that comes in with a challenge on its own, because you're going
Exactly.
into unknown territory,
Mm.
unfamiliar terrain. What if I don't live up to expectation? I
Mm.
remember, in Nigeria before, the time my role was expanded, and you said, Lola, I got a letter from the head of HR. I said, you know what, we're not going to add this thing to your role. You're now head of sustainability, and I didn't really know so much about sustainability, but then I had to, just like I mentioned earlier, I had to now read, just start, getting to know my audience, building expertise in that area. So I think, those three things, learning from failure, and then rising up to new challenges,
Challenges.
building
Mm.
capacity, building expertise in new areas, and then just making sure that I show up every day, even if it's a new area.
Wow. That is interesting. I mean, I have I've always said this, that almost every highly successful people have also had humbling failures.
Oh,
And that is
it was
exactly
an
what
humbling
you're explaining.
one.
Because sometimes people think that successful people, they've never failed before. And that
Mhm,
is why I say, well, yeah, it's just exclusive to some people. No. And like you said now,
mhm,
even though you are very successful, you also have your own share of failure,
mhm,
but ability to get out and move
mhm,
on, keep up,
mhm.
having their goal eye on the ball, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
should be the goal, and then that
Mhm.
will get you up, and then you keep going. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Thank you for that. I'm sure everybody that are listening, they can relate. Now,
Thanks.
uh, if there is anything that you would like to change, looking back now,
Mhm,
would there be anything that if you are given the opportunity, say, okay, with my career and my person, or
mhm.
whatever that thing that is happening to you, that's happened to you, if you are given the opportunity, would there be anything you would like to change? What would that be? Or how would
Yeah.
you have done? Okay, well, let me put it this way. Is there, okay, would you have done certain things in a certain way if given the opportunity?
Oh, sure. Yes. So when I started working in 2003, and between 2003 and 2009, I worked in 5 different organizations, meaning that I changed job 6 times actually. So I changed jobs because there was a particular organization that I worked with twice. So I worked with Standard Chartered twice. I started off with Access Bank, Echo, you know, um, Standard Chartered, sorry, Access Bank, Standard Chartered, Echo Bank, back to Standard Chartered, then Stanbic IBTC. And all these movements happened between 2003 and 2009.
Wow.
I was changing jobs. If I have a cousin of mine back then, she would call me and say, hey, Lola, how far? Have you changed jobs again? I said, it was that frequent. Looking back, okay, so that was, working with 5 organizations within 6 years. Looking back, I think it was just youthful exuberance. I was just so eager to, try new things and all that. So looking, if I was to change that, I would have, I would have, if, I would have done things differently. I do realize that it's also important to build expertise in one area before moving on. So in my mind, I thought, I've done this for so long, I'll move on. I'll move to another role. I'll move to another organization and all that. But thankfully, when I moved to Stanbic in 2009, I spent 12 and a half years then before I then came to Canada. And I'm sure if I had not come to Canada, I would still be working there. Yeah, so that's one thing if I look back, I would love to change, not jumping around at the sound of for every role, new came more money natural, which is the difference. I would not jump at every promise of the next level of the next, looking back, I shouldn't have done that. But I'm glad you all came, everything ended well, at least so far so good. Yeah.
I
So
think I'm
that's
going to
one
give
area.
an unsolicited advert for Stanbic
Mm-hmm.
IBTC. I think I've
Mm-hmm.
had a couple of good friends who are about to stay a longer time in Stanbic IBTC.
Absolutely.
That means that the bank must have been
Absolutely.
a very good bank.
Oh, yes. Yeah. In fact, so talking about that, my cousin, I used to, whenever she calls, and every time, she stopped asking me. She stopped asking me because when she started asking 2009, 2010, 2011,
See
then
there?
she switched, lingo to say something must be happening in that Stanbic IBTC that they've kept doing
Yeah.
for so long. And indeed, because it's a group, it's a holding company, we have the bank, the different subsidiaries. So and like I mentioned also earlier on, that every time I raised up my hand and said, you know what, I think I've outgrown this role. I want to do something else. I had that opportunity. So that was the point going outside if what I want to do is
Wow.
inside, seeing the different businesses within the group. I mean, there's the opportunity to do different things. So it's a fantastic organization.
Wow. So Stanbic IBTC, shout out to you. You are doing a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, before I allow
Mm-hmm.
you go, would there be any final word that you want to share with our audience today? Thank you so much. Let me call say, tell me and say thank you so much for your time, for sharing your experience, sharing what has helped you to be this successful. So, if there is anything, any final thoughts, any parting word that you want to share with the listener, this will be the time for you to say that. Thank you. So, then go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Johnson. I think I'll just rehash some of the things I've said earlier on. Lifelong learning, be committed to continuous learning. Please learn, and learn. There's a time to also unlearn and relearn. That's another lingo that has become popular in the past few years. Also, I think we've not talked about this, and I think it's important we do. It's about prioritizing self-care. So in our quest to be successful, in our quest, we want to do so many things, we want to conquer the world, which is fine. At times we neglect ourselves. And also, maybe that's one thing, your last question, that's another thing I should have said. In all our quest to be successful, let's also be mindful of ourselves and be mindful of our well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being. So please prioritize self-care. Make sure that you achieve that work-life balance. Pay attention to yourself the same way and manner you pay attention to your career.
Wow, thank you so much, Maola. I am very grateful for this time, and I wish you continuous success in your career and in
Thank
life.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Johnson. Appreciate it.